Hi everyone, in this tutorial I wanted to share with you how I like to turn an embroidery into a patch. You'll need a couple of different things to complete this activity. You will need whatever embroidery that you'd like to turn into a patch. I have this little embroidered E that I made a while back, and you will need some sort of embroidery hoop that is the size of what you want the patch to be so you can trace the inner portion of the ring. You will also need some floss that you want to embroider and reinforce the edges with. I chose this variegated floss that kind of matches the embroidery, but you can choose whatever color you'd like. You'll need some sort of way to mark the fabric. I like to use these Leonis pens. These are water soluble and they work very nicely. You'll need an embroidery needle, and then if you want to make the patch iron-on, you can purchase this Heat and Bond iron-on adhesive at most craft stores, and I just got I think it's like a clear or a white kind. The final thing that would be helpful while you are working part of this is to get an embroidery hoop that's ever so slightly bigger than whatever size the patch you want it to be. So I believe this is a 3-inch hoop and this is a 5-inch hoop, so I would go about 2 inches larger. This will just help to stabilize the fabric in part of the steps that we'll be taking. So the first thing that I'll be doing is tracing the inner ring and centering this embroidery to be the shape and the size that I want it to be. So I want to make sure this is completely centered because I'll be cutting this out around this circle once I have chosen where I want it to go. That looks pretty good to me. I like to use the embroidery hoop because I do want to make this as circular and perfect as possible. So that's pretty much all you need in regards to the fabric marker. And next I'm going to be placing this in the hoop. I'm using a pretty thin piece of linen, so honestly I think I'm going to retrace this because sometimes when you place this in the hoop and stretch the fabric out, it can distort the circle. So I'm going to go back in and trace this one more time. And this is water soluble, so it won't matter if some of it shows up. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. This next part, I am going to take my thread and I'm actually going to cut a long piece and double it up. You want it to be a little bit longer than the patch, just in case. So I'll cut it to be about right here. You're going to take this thread and I'm gonna do a couching stitch around the edge of this. And I'm doing this mainly because I want to add a little bit of a ridge around the edge. I just think that that looks good for a patch. So I'm gonna use the couching stitch to kind of raise it up. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do this for finishing it off. So I will share with you 2 different ways. So I have tied a knot in the end of my thread, and I'm just gonna come up along the line. And this is going to be the thread that I'm gonna lay down. And then I'm just going to cut this needle off really quick. And I will be taking another piece of thread here. Again, I'm just gonna tie a little knot in the end. And with this other piece here, I am going to come up a little bit farther down and just lay the thread along this line and begin to secure it down. And you can leave some space in between each of these stitches. They don't have to be super close together quite yet. Because right now I'm mainly just focused on laying this down to make sure that the patch is as circular as I can possibly get it. It's probably not going to be perfect. It's really hard to get a perfect circle, but we can try to get close. Once you get to the very end here, you can leave a little bit of space and you're gonna go back down with this thread that it basically will just go back down at the end of that thread. I might need to use a little bit bigger needle. We'll see if I can get this to work. I might just thread them separately and do that way. I don't really feel like looking for another needle right now. So I'm just gonna go at the very end of where that thread came up. So I went ahead and secured the thread on the back with a couple of knots, and I cut myself a new strand. I just want it to be long enough to where hopefully I won't have to switch strands. I tied a knot in the end, and then there's two different ways you could do this stitch. You can either do a satin stitch where you just basically cover this entire strand that we secured onto the fabric, or you can do a buttonhole stitch, which I'm gonna do a buttonhole stitch. I just think it looks nicer around the edges. Either one will secure the fabric to where it won't fray, so that's pretty much the only thing that is really important, but it's whatever you want to do. So I will show you how I like to do the buttonhole stitch. You're gonna come up underneath of the line, just underneath, and you're going to take your needle and you're going to go at the top. I started at like right beside one of the notches that I made, one of the anchor stitches. So I'm going to go at the top of the anchor stitch, and then I'm gonna catch the loop that forms here, and I'm gonna go directly to the left beside that top anchor stitch. This will catch the loop, and there should be almost like a small upside down L kind of that forms. And then I will continue on. So I will go down below the line here, and then I will, with my needle, go directly to the left of that little vertical stitch and pull through. And as you can see, there's little backwards L's or upside down L's that form. And I'm just being careful that I'm starting and ending them directly below and above the threads that we anchored down. So I am going to do this all the way around until I've completely covered up all of this circle. I love the way this looks with the variegated floss. I think it makes it look very neat, but it does draw a lot of attention to the outer edge of the patch. So if you don't want it to be super obvious, you could match the thread color to the fabric color. If you are doing the same stitch as me and you run out of thread, here is how you can restart it. So you're going to make a stitch and act like you're about to come back up through the fabric, but you'll just leave a little loop here and then unthread your needle. And you're going to start with the new thread through that loop. This way it'll like seamlessly start and end the stitch, because otherwise you can see where you've started and ended. So you'll go back up like you were going to just make that stitch and pull through, and then flip over to the back and pull this gently, and your stitch is anchored. So now you'll just gently make a knot in your thread to secure the two ends together. And then you can keep going. So I have finished stitching around the patch, and I have this one last strand of thread that I want to secure. I don't have any other strands to tie it to, so I wanted to share with you how to do a little finishing knot. So if you go underneath of a couple of stitches that are nearby with your needle, and you're gonna leave a little loop, and you're gonna take your needle and go through the loop. You're gonna go underneath again with your needle and thread, and then you're gonna catch that loop. And a little knot should form. You can just kind of press it down, pull it down, and trim it, and you're all secure. And you can trim any extra stray threads, but we'll end up cutting those out anyways. So you can cut this out of the fabric now and it should not fray, but I'm gonna take an extra step and add some heat and bond to the back so it's iron on as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and iron my embroidery first so I know that it's nice and flat and in the position that I want it once I secure the backing onto it. So I have cut a piece of the heat and bond so it is enough to go over top of this with some margin. And you want to put the shiny part face down on the embroidery. This is the adhesive side, this is the paper side. And then you will just take your iron and using medium heat for heat and bond, unless you're using another product, I would follow those instructions, but without any steam, you're just going to iron this on. And I like to do it a couple of times just to make sure that it's adhered pretty nicely. And as you can see, it is stuck on there pretty well. Now you can cut this out and you should be good to go. So when I do this, I just like to really be careful that I'm not cutting out any of the stitches. And I try to go as close as I can. I think it's easier with the buttonhole stitch because there's a little bit of a ridge around it. So I think that gives you a little bit more coverage to where you're not gonna have any fabric poking through. So I've cut this out, and then once you're done, you can just kind of rub your finger on the edge of this and the backing should come off. And now you have an iron-on patch. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like embroidery tutorials, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.